I'm Stephen Belling and I am the Programme Director for an organisation called the Nehemiah Foundation. I've always been interested in how society works, how the world ticks, and that led me to choose a social science to study at college. I studied law, and from there I went to work in the local authority because that was a real sense of how does a neighbourhood work, how does a local authority area work. And from there I went to work in a law firm and specialised in working in neighbourhood transformation work. So that was something I did for over 19 years, working in different parts of the country. And the experiences in those places led me to where I am today, essentially taking the specialist knowledge and taking that into the Nehemiah Foundation. I think there are three things that motivate me really. The first one I would say is a sense of fairness. Things that are unfair really strike my consciousness, as it were. And leading to that is social justice, a real sense of how do things get sorted out. And I think the third thing comes from a value framework which I was attracted to quite early on, which is about the fullness of life and everyone's right to live a full and flourishing life. Leadership is actually about responding to challenges. So in many ways challenges are norms. One is the potential endlessness of leadership, in that there's so much needs doing and sorting. How you actually build boundaries around that to know when to stop, when to pause, when to have space. The second one is about the expectations and norms that you create by the way you operate, by the way you respond to things. People clock them and then want to follow through. So if you're not careful, you can set expectations and norms that become draining and demanding and take the life force out of you. So again, boundaries are a key part of that. It can also be a very lonely experience, especially if you're leading on something that others don't understand, or they haven't understood the context, or who's given you the brief. So I think loneliness can be an issue, especially if it's pioneering work or something that others aren't doing. Effective communication, I think, is always a challenge as well, because of the speed in which we live at these days, expectations that people have, attention spans. So I think to really know what you've got to communicate in a short space of time is a challenge as to how you do that well and effectively. Self-doubt, I think, is another key one, especially when you're pioneering again, in terms of how do you handle and stay confident when you're leading. How do you stay confident when you're not and people are looking for confidence in you? That's a good challenge. And then finally, I suppose, cutting your cloth to match the resources that you have and the challenges that you have, because if you're a leader that's inspired and excited about things, knowing what's possible and when is a real art form. I'm learning as a leader, I think, a number of things. Two headliners would be that it's a never-ending experience, that learning. And the second is that I think it's very much about horses for courses, in that different styles of leadership are needed for different times, different seasons and different jobs. I think there are four key things that I'm learning within that context. The first is that you need to believe in what you're leading and have to be passionate about it, because if you don't believe in it, you can't be convincing and you can't lead. I think the second is where it's possible, being part of a team and building a team is really important. And for a good team, I think what I've learned most is that you need a good skills mix, because if everybody's the same, then you have shortfalls and shortcomings as a group. A shared awareness of that mix, so for a leader to know that mix but not the others, means that the others aren't empowered and they can't draw on that mix in the same way. And then thirdly, I think an authentic and credible value framework that binds you all together, binds your organisation together, makes a massive difference. So I think those are very important. And in terms of when leadership is lonely and when it's hard, a good reference point, a good place to go to talk, to reflect through, I think is very valuable, to stop and to minimise the lack of confidence, the uncertainty and the negative impact and consequences of that state of mind. And I think linked to that finally is the discipline of reflection and taking time out to think about what you're doing, why you're doing and how you're doing it, because without that you can lose your sharpness, you can lose your focus, and leadership is demanding and expectations are increasingly high. So to do the best with that, to be constantly reflecting on what you're doing, why you're doing it and whether you're doing it well, I think is important.